Welcome to the Perrysburg Podcast, episode 120. I'm your host, Perrysburg resident Kim Newlove. The Perrysburg Podcast is a resource for Perrysburg residents. We talk about what's in Perrysburg and why people like to live here. Our website is perrysburgpodcast.com. Today's episode is an interview with Perrysburg resident Colleen Fisher. Colleen is a resource about senior living at Clare Commons. In addition to discussing Clare Commons during this episode, Colleen also gives some helpful advice about having open-ended conversations with older adults about their goals, interests, and any challenges they're facing. It is my hope that this podcast episode will help you have some meaningful conversations with the older adults in your life, especially during the upcoming holiday season. It is the beginning of November. We've got Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's coming right around the corner. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Colleen Fisher. Hi, Colleen. Welcome to the Perrysburg Podcast.
Hi.
It's good to have you with me today.
Thank you.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Colleen Fisher. I'm a social worker here in Perrysburg. I've lived here since I was in second grade, which was, you can't see me, but many, many years ago.
Do you live in the city or the township at this time?
Currently, we live in the township. Lived in the city in the majority of my life. We built a house about 10 years ago out in the township.
And you graduated from Perrysburg High School then, right?
Yes. The old Perrysburg High School, the current junior high.
Okay. All right. What do you think about how they're using it as a junior high now? Did you ever see that coming?
No, it was tight when we were in school, so I can't imagine what it is. I mean, we outgrew the high school within years of it being built, and I can't believe that was 25 years ago. So, yeah, it's crazy being back in there and seeing how full it is and how small it is, because it seemed so big at the time.
I went to Eastwood, and I remember going up and down I-75, and I'd always look over there at Perrysburg High School and think, wow, it looks so much bigger. It has a second story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what class did you graduate in? Class of?
1987.
87. All right. Shout out to the class of 87. All right. Very good. Now, you said that you came here when you were in second grade, right?
Mm-hmm.
What brought your family to Perrysburg?
My dad was a manager with here it was the Jeep Corporation. Up in Milwaukee, it was American Motors. So we were transferred here with an influx of people from Wisconsin to the Toledo area.
I grew up with the big, the Willys Overland smokestack along I-475. And it's still there, apparently, even though the Jeep factory isn't. But yeah, it sounds like your family was brought in to work there at that location.
Yep. My dad was, I forget his actual title now. He was some management that was brought in from Milwaukee, and a bunch of his friends actually were transferred here as well. So that was nice. They got to stay with some of the couples that they knew. And then some of those folks actually got transferred up to Detroit. But my dad passed away young, so we haven't had anything to do with he wasn't around when it was Chrysler or anything like that.
Well, I'm sorry for your loss, but it sounds like you stayed after you graduated in 87. So what kept you here?
Well, I went to school and came back, and my mom used to tease all my girlfriends about it, because we all could not wait to get out of Perrysburg. In high school, it was just ridiculous. Everybody knew everybody's business, and just too small of a town. And the vast majority of us have moved back to raise our kids. So that's why I came back and why I stayed, was because it's just a safe. We could run around and toilet paper people's houses at 3:00 in the morning. And, you were never more than 2 houses away from somebody you knew, and it was safe. I don't condone that. It's just a matter of you never had to worry.
It sounds like community brought you back, or really kept you here, because you only left briefly. And where'd you go to college?
BG.
All right. They didn't have a pharmacy school, so that's why I didn't go to BG myself. I ended up at the University of Toledo, but both are great schools.
Yes, they are.
But in the Battle of I-75, of course, I'm rooting for UT, and you're rooting for?
BG, and we won.
Yeah. Some years you get us, some years we get you. But anyways, congrats. All right. Now that you have Long past the college years and you're well into your career. What keeps you here in Perrysburg? Perrysburg Township now.
I think, well, I have one daughter who's 25, the schools kept us here throughout her upbringing. Just the quality of the education that she received and comfort. I mean, to be honest, it's just a comfort level that I know where everything is. I know most of the people, or it feels like it, not so much anymore because Perrysburg's gotten so much younger. But it's just that comfort level of feeling like you're home.
That's a great answer. I really like that. You feel like it feels like home.
Yeah.
Nice. I appreciate you introducing yourself and talking about your background and everything. One of the things that I have been wanting to do on this podcast is do something for the senior community. I was originally hoping to do a top 10 things to do in Perrysburg if you're a senior, but I never got around to it. And then you approached me about an interview, and I thought this is really good timing. I've been wanting to do that, and then we're coming up on the holidays when a lot of people will meet up with all of the family members that they maybe haven't seen for a while.
Hmm.
And I thought you could talk about what you do in your day job and maybe get some information out there for the senior community. And you can get me off the hook for coming up with my own top 10 things to do in Perrysburg for seniors. So tell me about what you do for your day job now.
Well, right now I'm the marketing director at Clare Commons, which is a senior living community right here in Perrysburg. We have independent, assisted memory care, long-term care, skilled nursing care, pretty much any level that you need, we can provide within our community. Folks can come for rehab after a hip replacement or after a stroke or an accident, or they can live there long term. Our independent living folks still have their cars. They still go out and about, do whatever they need to do. It's just the amenities really are what draw the independent folks to us. The assisted living folks, they just need a little bit more help with their activities of daily living, whether that be bathing, dressing, managing their medications. They just need a little more help. So that's where the assisted living comes in. And then we also have memory care, which is for folks that have been afflicted with dementia or Alzheimer's. And that's a secure unit that the staffing levels are much higher and folks get much more individualized care than they would in a traditional nursing home.
It does sound like you have the whole spectrum
Mhm.
of care options there. It's an interesting thing when somebody decides to enter that spectrum, that continuum of care in a senior living environment. Can you talk a little bit about entry points? Like, how do people come to you?
Well, I think people come in a variety of different ways. There's lots of avenues that folks can take. You can talk with your loved one about what they want to do in the future, what they see their future plans as. There's different conversations you can have. Folks look us up online and just Google assisted living and they show up. I mean, it's just that broad of a, we encourage folks to investigate their opportunities when it's not a crisis. It's so much easier to develop a plan when you're not in crisis mode. Mom just had a stroke and I need some place for her to go, and the hospital's giving me 48 hours notice, and you have to find some place for mom to live. That's really hard, as opposed to, I had a gentleman this morning who came in and his mom is 95. She lives in the same house she's lived in since 1955. And she's functional and does fine on her own, but he wants to have all of his ducks in a row because things can change on a dime. So he just is touring different facilities and wanting to know what's available because he can see her needing assisted living if she has any kind of setback. So he's just trying to be very proactive, which is very beneficial.
I bet there's a lot of people who are both doing the strategy option and doing the crisis
Mhm.
option. Doing the crisis option, I'm sure, is just so intense. So I know a lot of people prefer to make decisions when they're not under the gun to do that. But in general, there's just a lot of people who are trying to figure these things out, whether it's strategy or crisis. So, like how many people in Perrysburg need a senior living community?
Well, I think the stat I gave you before when we were speaking was 11,000 people a day turn 65 in our country. So I don't know how that translates to Perrysburg, but quite a few. And 65 isn't the magic number for senior living either. I want to make sure I'm clear with that. It's deciding to move into senior living is more about what they're planning on doing in the future. Someone turning 65 shouldn't automatically be screened for senior living. There's conversations that should be had by the family and the loved one. You want to see if there's changes in the loved one's ability to manage daily tasks. Are they struggling with cooking, cleaning, managing their medications or personal care? Have you seen more isolation from your loved one? Have you seen them withdraw? Are they losing connections or finding it difficult to engage in activities that they once enjoyed? Safety concerns are a huge deal. If someone's falling or near falls, there could be unaddressed maintenance issues in the house. Are the steps crumbling? Are the stairs creaking? Things like that. Do you see any kind of sign of cognitive decline in folks? That's a trigger to maybe have some conversations about what the next steps should be. We have a set of twins that live with us actually, and one of them moved in because she just did not want to do anything anymore. She simply did not want to cook. She did not want to clean. She did not want to do it. So she has us do everything for her, and she loves it. And she'll tell people who come in and tour that that's what she wanted, was she wanted to come in and just have to do what she wanted to do and nothing else. People come to us from all different avenues. And like you said, it's best if it can be done strategically versus in crisis mode. But in crisis mode, we're there to help too.
It's hard to know when to have the conversation because I know on the strategic side, that's what I'm talking about. When you have somebody who's 65 years old, sometimes that can mentally trigger us as the children of the, older adults. Maybe I should be having this conversation. But it's very hard to almost have a checklist. Like, when is it time to talk to my mom and dad about senior living? My parents, they're 75. At some point, they may need senior living. I have no idea how to tell when it's time for me to have that conversation with them. So I'm listening to our conversation with ears, thinking I might need a strategy for my own parents. But just knowing that entry point, that's hard. You said some people take it upon themselves to Google things and go around and look at the senior living communities. That sounds great. But I am so busy in my life, I don't know when I should do that for my own parents. Do you have any advice for me?
I think you can have conversations with your parents about like open-ended questions and just say, what are you looking forward to in the coming years? And see where your answers go. It can open up a whole box of challenges and hopes and dreams that they probably haven't been asked in a while because you get to a certain age and people aren't asking you what you want to do in the next couple of years. You can ask them how they feel about specific areas of their life. How do you feel? Do you think you're still getting around okay? How's it going cooking? Just open-ended questions like that. Another good one is to ask if there's any hobbies or any activities that they used to be able to enjoy that they're not able to enjoy anymore, and kind of find out why that is. It can talk to unmet social needs, and that's what a senior living community is really good for because it's a built-in socialization center, really. I mean, you can be as social or as antisocial as you want to be. And then, you can always say, well, my husband and I were thinking about what we're going to do in retirement. What have you and dad talked about? What does it look like for you and dad? And see just that empathy and that putting people in the same boat a lot of times can bring about some answers for you as well.
I like the suggestion to ask open ended questions. That's a really great suggestion. As we get together for Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's and all the upcoming holidays, I think that it would be nice to kind of break it into a couple different questions instead of I think they're going to catch on if I ask them a whole bunch of questions
Yes,
at
you
the same
don't
time.
want it to be an interrogation.
Yes. Yes. When you were saying that, I was thinking they're going to catch on if I start asking these questions like, how's your social life, mom and dad? Have you been decluttering anything lately? I mean, you got a lot of stuff. What you going to do with all that? I really do think they would catch on. So, for any older adults listening to this, please don't be suspicious of your children if they're asking these questions. They love you. But yeah, I think these questions, whether we're thinking about senior living communities or not, these are great questions to
Mhm.
ask the older adults in our lives, right?
My mom was hysterical. She used to crack me up, talk about the decluttering. She would go around her house and put stickers on the back of things as to whether my sister or I got it. It was morbid, but it was hilarious because she was like, "Well, you always liked this better." And so that would get a green sticker. And then, if it was for my sister Kathy, then that would get a blue sticker. And yeah. So asking open-ended questions can get you really entertaining conversations sometimes and help
Yes.
you find out things about your parents that maybe you didn't know before, especially about hobbies and interests that what would your parents do if you ask them, Mom and Dad, what are some things you used to love doing that you're not able to do anymore? And why? And what can we do to help you along that path to be able to enjoy those things again?
These are great questions to get to know the older adults in our lives better, for sure, not just so we can assess their readiness for a senior living community.
Right,
That's what I hear
absolutely.
you saying. Yeah. This is something we should all be asking the older adults in our lives, whether we're thinking about just preserving memories or walking down memory lane or thinking about readiness for a senior living community. I think these are great conversations to have, and I'm really glad that you're talking to me about this today. So, what are some of the other open ended questions that we could be asking the older adults in our lives?
You can talk about activity. To just say, how active are you is it's open ended, but it's very transparent that you're trying to get at something else. So you want to talk not only about physical exercise, but you want active to encompass a lot of things. You want it to talk about physical activity. Are they getting regular movement, whether it's walking, chair yoga, or more vigorous exercise? I mean, we have 65-year-olds that are running marathons. Yeah, they're way more active than I am. Cognitive engagement is important when talking about activity. We want to make sure that they have activities that stimulate the mind, like reading and puzzles, learning new skills. We want to make sure that folks are socially connected. That's another way to check their activity level. And is there purpose in their life? One of the big things that we can offer at senior living centers is they can volunteer for, I'm thinking just at our place in specifically, we have folks that volunteer specifically as Eucharistic ministers or as the sacristan, and they have a role in the community that they take very seriously, that still it's a quote unquote job that they're held accountable for every day.
Yeah, that sounds like having routines is important. So,
Mm-hmm.
we could ask the older adults in our lives, what are some of the routines that you've got going on? Or how about relationships? I'm not talking like romantic relationships, but I really don't ask my dad in particular too often, who do you hang out with? So help me. Like, what is a really non-judgmental or like a non-prying way to ask my dad in particular? Like, what relationships are in your life? Which ones are important to you?
I think maybe how you just phrased that about what kind of relationships are important to you, Dad, and what maybe talking about friends and family and bringing them in as a comparison or as a jumping board to getting into that topic with your dad. Talking about social lives, or you can always say, I was doing a podcast with this weird lady and
Colleen, you're not weird.
she was talking about, older adults and their social lives. Dad, what do you think of that? What does that mean to you? At our place at St. Clare Commons, we really try to make sure that social lives are looked at very heavily. We want to make sure that there's all different aspects of a social life. We want to make sure that they have, spontaneous interactions. We have a lounge that people sit in before every meal. And that's where everybody sits for like a half an hour before the meal starts and they chit chat and catch up with each other. And those are like spontaneous interactions. We encourage a lot of organized activities. We have an events calendar that we have a very robust activities department. They have activities every day. We have book clubs. We have Bible studies, card games, puzzles, current events discussions, all sorts of different things. A social life, once you're in a community setting, is, going out on purposeful engagement and community events. Again, talking about opportunities to volunteer. Maybe if your dad is able to, would he enjoy delivering meals with the senior center? Would that be something that he would get some joy out of? Still finding that purpose at 75, yeah, when I'm 75, I don't want to be doing much of anything. I think I've worked enough, but there are people who want to do that. So, what are some things that would really be fulfilling for your dad?
Yeah, I think I have not had these conversations. It can be hard as a child to kind of check up on mom and dad. I just kind of trust that they're filling up their day with things that they enjoy. And I don't make much of an effort to ask, what they're up to unless they volunteer it. So I could do a much better job of having these conversations with them. And again, this is helpful for me. So I honestly think my dad would love to deliver meals, like Meals on Wheels. He does love to drive and he loves to help people. So maybe I should ask him if he'd be interested in that. Or off mic before I pressed record, I was saying that my son, who has autism, really enjoys delivering things. So maybe it's something that my dad, my son, and I could be doing together. So
Mm-hmm.
my son likes to deliver mail to the mailbox, at the post office. He likes to deliver packages to the UPS center over on Oakmead Drive here in Perrysburg. So anyways, I'm starting to see how maybe this is something that we could do once a month or maybe more often together.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't get to see me as often as he wants to. I don't know. But with the holidays coming up, it's a great opportunity since we're going to reconnect like 2 months in a row, Thanksgiving and Christmas, then we could have these conversations. And it won't just be me around, my son, Derek, who's coming home from college, will be there too. So he can ask, hey, Grandpa, yeah, what are you up to? So I think it's good to have these conversations. And it can be awkward at first
Mm-hmm.
when you don't typically have those conversations. Any advice for anybody who doesn't typically have these conversations where they're asking these open-ended questions and they're really curious because they care about mom or dad or aunt or uncle, whoever we're talking about as an older adult, but they don't want it to seem forced or like we're screening them for putting them in a nursing home or something like that. Like, how do you start that conversation without it seeming kind of weird or awkward?
See, I've been fortunate that I've been doing this for so long that if I came home and talked about my day with my mom,
Uh,
I, had an in right then. So I always knew what her wishes were because we talked about it because I brought, I worked hospice for close to 20 years. So we brought, stories of that home every day. And so I knew where my mom wanted to live, what she wanted to do. If you don't have the luxury of being in this line of work, I think, you can always pull from current events. There's, things on the news all the time about vital active seniors and pull from that and say, Dad, did you see that story on CBS about the blah, 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 and kind of tie it in that way.
or could I say, hey, there's this advertisement in the Perrysburg Messenger Journal newspaper about the Perrysburg Senior Center, and it says there's all these activities. Do you do anything like that? Like, would that be pretty natural? I mean, it seems like it'd be natural.
To ask your dad? Yeah, I think of course it would be.
I don't think my parents are ready to go into a senior living community, but how would I have that conversation with them? I don't want to make it awkward, but like, I'm probably not the only person who has had this thought in their head. Should I be asking them if they're thinking about it? What advice do you have for, children who are thinking about, kind of intentionally screening their parents to live in a senior living community?
Moving into a senior living community can mean empowerment, and it definitely means peace of mind. It means peace of mind not only for the senior, but for the family, like you're talking about. I think you have to dispel the myths about what senior living is. It's not an old folks' home, it's not a nursing home, it's an apartment building, plain and simple. An apartment building with a lot of amenities. There's activities. It's not what most people envision when they think of senior living. So I think you have to dispel the myths around that. But to actually have the conversation, like I said, I think, pulling from current events is always good. Talking about comparative stories like, oh, my friend Sally's mom just moved into this apartment. You should see it. And explain it that way and say, is that something you and dad ever thought about? I think you are better off being direct than trying to hide the questions in conversation and then getting caught. Because if you just truly want to know what is your thought process around the next 5 years of your life, you can go back to that question I said before, as far as, what do you see your life like in the next few years? While you're gathering information about goals and dreams, you're going to hear whether or not they want to stay in their home. There's going to, and more often than not, people are going to want to stay in their home. But I think that's because people don't realize how vibrant these senior communities actually are.
My mom grew up on a farm, and she said she always wants to live someplace where she has a field in the backyard. And I think you guys have that there.
You should come live with us. We've got fields all around us. We've got ponds and fields.
Yeah, that's nice. How long has St. Clare Commons been there on Route 25?
We celebrated our 10th anniversary 2 years ago, so around 12 years. And we were started by the Sisters of St. Francis and owned by the diocese at one point. And then now we're owned by CHI and Common Spirit. So it's changed hands a couple times, but the mission has always stayed the same.
And then are there plans for anything to be built in those fields, or do you guys own those?
We own them. So as of right now, I know there was a master grand plan at one point in time for private homes, like a true continuous care community. I don't think those are in the works anytime soon.
Okay.
But we still own them. So there would still be fields for mom to look at.
Okay. When I think of St. Clare Commons, I think of a Catholic community. My parents are Lutheran. Would they be welcome there?
Oh, absolutely. Our mission is faith-based. It's not Catholic-based.
Oh.
So while we do offer Mass a couple times a week, we also offer Lutheran services. We have Bible study. We have a full-time chaplain who is non-denominational and meets everyone where they're at. Faith is very important at St. Clare Commons, but it's definitely, you don't have to be Catholic to enjoy the benefits.
That's good to know. I honestly didn't know. So I didn't want to over prepare for this interview and then sound like a know-it-all. So I'm happy that I can get some questions answered by you. That's good. Well, I understand now some of the open-ended questions that would be good to ask. Whether we're screening older adults for a senior living community or just out of interest and care and strategy and all that good stuff. I don't want to miss anything because you're such a great resource about senior living. So let me just kind of review what some of the stuff that I've heard today and see if you have anything to add. Does that sound fair?
Sounds fair.
Okay. We talked about how there's an awful lot of people turning 65 every day. And that includes people in Perrysburg, I'm sure. We don't know exactly how many there are, but I think we can agree there are some. There are plenty of active older adults in Perrysburg, and we talked about kind of how to define active. They have relationships, they're physically active. Anything else you would add to the term active older adult?
Active does mean so many different things. Like I said, it's not just physical activity. It's your cognitive abilities, your cognitive engagement is very important. If you're sitting in a house all by yourself every day, yeah, you maintained living in your home which was a goal, that's great, but you're depressed and lonely and you don't have that social interaction. So I think active needs to be looked at a little bit more broadly. Social connection is huge, participating in social events, building and maintaining friendships, and finding that sense of belonging, I think contributes to how quote unquote active are you. And again, I sound like a broken record, but going back to that feeling of purpose, are you still engaged in meaningful activities and making sure that you feel fulfilled?
Well, yeah, you're right. Active can mean a number of different things. It's more than just physical, it can be social or intellectual. There's a lot of different definitions of active. And then we joked a little bit earlier about how your mom had put stickers on things in her home that she wanted to gift you and your sister. But when it comes to decluttering or maybe some signs where older adults are ready, like readiness signs, is there anything else you want to talk about? Things that maybe kiddos could talk to their older adult parents about when it comes to decluttering or just spatial things in the home, thinking through what size space do I want to live in now that my kids are all out of the house?
One of the things we do at St. Clair is give everyone concrete floor plans so they can look at the space that they're going to be moving into and kind of envision where their precious belongings are going to go. I recommend working with professional organizers too, because people have been collecting these belongings for 75 years, maybe at the least sometimes. And they may believe that, their grandchildren are going to want this china and they have to save it for them when in reality the grandkids do not want the china. People live differently now than they did 50 years ago. So just kind of going through where someone can be that soft, gentle voice and saying, maybe Billy and Sally don't want the china, mom, just kind of getting through that. But decluttering has become such a buzzword. It is extremely practical. Identifying potential challenges when you're trying to move into a new space, I think is important because you're going to have to figure out what you want to keep, what you don't want to get rid of, and just figure out how everything's going to fit. So that's why we give the floor plans so people can kind of plan out their space.
I just thought of something when we were talking about being an active older adult and we were talking about kind of intellectually being active. If you gave an older adult who's thinking about downsizing from their home that they raised their children in down to an apartment at St. Clair Commons, I think certain people enjoy a problem like that, trying to figure out, what you would keep and what you would toss. And, anyways, it can be kind of like a
Tetris.
Tetris. Oh my gosh, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's great. Yeah, I mean, some people really enjoy stuff like that. And I think it gives them permission to think about what would it be like if I moved to this smaller space. So that's something that you made me think about when you were talking about the floor plan.
And I think I've had residents tell me that it was actually freeing to get rid of so many bulky items and just streamline into what they have. A lady that lives across the hall from me, where my office is, she has rearranged her apartment 4 times in less than a year because she is enjoying having the ability to do that and having I don't want to say so few belongings, but so many concise items that she's able to rearrange it in different ways. And she's really enjoying not having to live the same way that she lived for 30 years prior.
Interesting. Yeah, she's got a few variations on what it means to be an apartment dweller.
Yes.
I'm also still going down my list here. We had talked about social life, and I wanted to ask, did I miss anything about what does social life look like at St. Clair Commons? You had stuck in a few things about Bible studies and all kinds of activities, but I don't know if I heard about everything. Did you want to say anything else about social activities?
Being social is really at the heart of who we are. Going back to what I said before about spontaneous interactions, chatting before meals, organized activities. We have bingo. Everybody loves bingo. We have bingo. We have live music. We have happy hour every Thursday with an open bar and live music most of the time. I think there's one time a month. There's no live music. We go on community outings. We went a few weeks ago to the Stranahan to see the Thorn, go to Books A Million and wander around, sit in the coffee shop, just go to Levis Commons and people wander around. So there's lots of different outings for things like that. We have lots of opportunities to volunteer within the community, like I said, that still make people feel like they have a purpose. And family and friends are always welcome with us. We have, some kids that are there every single day. They come and they eat with their loved one. They sit and do puzzles with them. They take them out for meals. So social life is very important.
What's trick or treat night like over at St. Clare Commons?
Trick or treat is fun. We just had that, and I don't even know how many kids we had. We had a ton of kids, and some of our residents dressed up. The assisted living and independent living folks lined the hallway, and then the long-term care residents came into the doorway of their rooms. So the kids went up and down the hallway, and then we have 3 skilled nursing hallways. So they went up and down all of those. And we had ponies there for them and games and cider and just all sorts of fun stuff. It was a great night.
On the actual day of Halloween, all this happened?
We did ours the week before, so kids could still trick or treat on Halloween.
Okay, still, that's double the candy, double the fun.
Yeah, there was a lot of candy. You would not believe what my office looked like. There was a ton of candy.
Oh my gosh, talk about social. Yeah, Halloween is a very social event. All right, well, I'll keep going down my list here. We had talked earlier about thinking of busting some myths when it came to terminology for senior living. You have so many different things. There's a whole spectrum. I know you had talked about assisted living, independent living, skilled nursing care, and so on. Did I miss anything? Is there anything you'd like to review?
As far as myths go, I think one myth is it's where you go when you can't take care of yourself anymore. And that's definitely a myth because we have a lot of people moving in who choose the senior living community for the lifestyle and amenities and social activities that it has, not just for the care needs. That's where all of our independent living residents are there for the amenities and the social life. They're not there. They don't need any assistance with personal care. They do their own laundry. Some still cook their own meals. Mm-hmm. Some do get their meals through the dining room. The one lady who just doesn't want to do anything anymore, she gets her meals through the dining room. They still have their cars, so it's definitely a myth that it's where you go when you can't take care of yourself anymore. Another myth is you lose your independence. That's definitely not true because you go from having to maintain a home, cooking and driving and doing all this stuff to having that free time that you don't have to do home maintenance anymore. You have more time and energy to pursue hobbies and socialize. The support services that assisted living can offer really can enable greater independence if you think about it. Another myth I would say is it's depressing and full of sick people. That just goes back to what we were saying before, where that's the reality couldn't be further from the truth. Even on the long-term care side of our facility, folks are very interactive and vibrant with the activities department. We had cardio drumming down the hall from me today before I left. And people, if they're even in a wheelchair, they still make it down there and still are able to participate in those activities. While some residents do require nursing care, most of them are active and healthy, and they're just simply choosing a more supportive environment than what they have sitting home alone by themselves.
I hear all positive things. This is great. Thanks for busting some myths, too. One of the things that my ear really picked up on was no home maintenance. I'm thinking about all of the shoveling of snow and mowing grass and things like that. So your residents do not need to do any of that, right?
No, they don't have any home maintenance. If they want to garden, they can garden. We have several outdoor areas. We have raised planters, so if people are wheelchair bound, they can garden, right from their wheelchair. So if they want outdoor activities, they're still there. We can fish in our pond, things like that, but you don't have any maintenance. So you're not out there breaking your back shoveling snow.
Nice. When can I move in? No, I'm just kidding. Oh, is there a minimum age? I should probably ask that. I'm only 47.
Yeah, you're too young. You're too young.
By comparison, I'll tell you, sometimes I look at things that are aimed towards seniors. So when I looked in the Perrysburg Messenger Journal and I saw this advertisement for the Perrysburg Senior Center, it actually did say that it was age 60 and up, programs and lunches for all area residents at least 60 and up. So I just thought of you when I read that, and I thought, well, I should make sure to ask Colleen if your residents have a minimum age for moving in. Is it 55, 60?
We normally say 55, but to be quite honest, they are a bit older than that. I would say 65. We
Okay.
have one lady who moved in last month, and I believe she's 62.
I'm thinking of some of these folks that love to travel in their retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was just, daydreaming about if I moved in at 55 and I didn't have to mow my grass or shovel my snow and I had somebody to watch the front porch for burglars and everything, I could be gone for
Deliver
any
your
length of time.
packages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys could accept my packages that get delivered. Yeah, it's kind of a sweet deal. So, anyways, I was just thinking about for people who want to travel, this would be a really great place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, senior
Yep.
living. And I think we're just about to the bottom of my list here. We were talking about relationships earlier. Is there anything else you want to say about relationships for senior living or senior living communities? There's a lot of people that own their own home as an older adult. And what relationships would they have access to or be able to enjoy in a senior living community as opposed to somebody who's a homeowner? Is there any advantage?
I think the socialization is the number one advantage because I picture, someone like, unfortunately, my grandmother who lived in Chicago and she lived in this house and she lived there for a million years and she stayed by herself. She did not have the socialization. That was her choice, but she did not have the socialization that we would have wanted for her. So I think that's the biggest relationship draw with senior living is you have built-in socialization when you're going down to a meal, when you go down to get your mail, you can check in with people. Even if, like I said, you can be as social or as antisocial as you want to be. We have folks who I only see them at happy hour. They don't come out any other time, but they still have that outlet.
And it sounds like you have a chaplain full-time on campus. Is that right?
Yes.
So for some people who, I don't know, maybe when it does snow or I don't know, the weather's bad and they don't feel like leaving, they do have access to a chaplain,
Mm-hmm.
if they were to live at Clare Commons instead. I feel like that's a relationship that would be an advantage, especially in those cold months or winter months or when it's just dark out and you don't feel like going out.
Yeah, spirituality is very important to us. And it's why we offer on-site religious services and social support. Like you said, making it easy to maintain those important connections and relationships.
Relationships are important. Yeah, and finding out what relationships are important to the older adults in our lives should be something that we find out about. Like, what relationships are important to you, mom and dad, for example, or aunt and uncle. Yeah. And we talked a little bit earlier. We're still going through my list of questions here. The last one that I have here is about planning. And I know earlier you said use current events as kind of like something to react to and ask the older adults in your life if they have a plan for senior living. What are some other ways to approach the topic of finding out if the older adults in our lives have a plan or not?
I think it's best to look at maybe some things that are happening around them. And there's like indicators that would jump out at you to trigger, hey, this is probably the good time to have a conversation. Like safety concerns are the number one thing. Are they falling or are they almost falling? Are they leaving burners on the stove unattended? Have there been medication mix-ups? Those are big triggers to have a more detailed conversation. If their health is declining at all, I mean, you want to make sure that you're addressing things early so that you don't end up in crisis mode. If it's harder for them to maintain the lawn or shovel the snow, or they shouldn't be shoveling the snow. I mean, let's just be honest.
Hey, some guys love their snow blowers.
Oh, snow
You know
blowers
what
are
I'm
fine.
saying?
Snow
Okay.
blowers are fine. It's that shovel that scares me.
Yeah, yeah, true, true.
If they're not able to manage the home anymore, then, that's a way to bring up, hey, have you thought about what you're going to be doing here in the next 5 years? And it all comes back to what their goals are and where they see themselves.
Thank you. Those are some really good suggestions. I think what I hear you saying is that if there's an event like a fall or a missed medication or maybe the yard does not look so hot. These are all talking points. Yeah. And as a young person, I don't want to disrespect my parents by talking to them about these things like, oh, the grass is getting kind of long. But you're right. That is a good talking point. Like, hey, do you have a plan or do you still enjoy that? Or would you like to hire that out? Or do you still want to live here? I've got to find the intestinal fortitude to have these conversations with my own parents. One of the things that I have going for me though is this podcast, and I've had the opportunity to talk to you about this, and I can talk to my parents with more confidence and with better questions, I think. So hopefully this podcast episode will empower other people to have quality conversations with the older adults in their lives.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I want to have an open mic moment here. Is there anything that you haven't had a chance to talk about yet that you would like to say?
The only thing I think we haven't talked about is caregiver strain. That's something to think about also when you're deciding when it's time for someone to maybe look towards senior living. If one spouse is taking care of the other one and you can see that it's just becoming too much for them, that's another time that it might cue you up to have these conversations. I don't think we look at our caregivers enough to see what they're going through. And a lot of times it would be easier on them if both of them went to a senior living community. And it really has nothing to do with the one that might be ailing. It's the one that's better that has to take care of everything.
Yeah, it is a huge burden. I take care of my son that has autism, and I know that someday I'm probably going to have to be the support person for my husband. He's a few years older than me. If my husband's listening to this, honey, please don't worry. I don't think you're old yet. But I know that, yeah, it's like taking care of two people then. And I'm not the only person in this world who's going to have that situation someday. But you're right, caregiver burden, it could have a tripping point where it becomes too much. So people need to go into strategy mode so they don't go into crisis mode later on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how would somebody have a conversation like their first entry point with you? I know you said the website is a great place for doing research, but would you be the person they would call if, as a caregiver, they're ready as a couple to go to St. Clare Commons?
Yeah. Give me a call, and my name and phone number and email is all on the website. And there's unfortunately a picture of me too. So you can get in contact with me and we can take a tour of the building. I can show you all around. You can meet some residents and see that it's not an old folks' home by any stretch of the imagination. And yeah, it would be great.
Well, thank you. I will put your contact information in the show notes as well so they can find it on perrysburgpodcast.com.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other entry points that you can think of? Social media or newsletters or
all of the
anything?
above.
Okay.
All of the above.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you very much, Colleen, for being here on the Perrysburg podcast.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks again to Colleen Fisher for being my guest on episode 120 of the Perrysburg podcast. I learned a lot today. I learned about St. Clare Commons more than I already knew, and I learned the benefits of senior living communities. I also appreciated her coaching me on entry points to meaningful conversations with my own parents. They are, in fact, 75. No matter where you are in your life, whether you're the parent, the child, or maybe a grandchild listening to this, I hope this episode has helped you as well. In the show notes today, you will find Colleen's phone number and email address. I've got links to St. Clare Commons, their website, and their Facebook page. And I've got a link to sign up for our weekly newsletter here on the podcast. Sign up on perrysburgpodcast.com, and I will email you every week once a new episode comes out. If you know someone who might like this episode or needs the information, please share it with them. And if you like this podcast, come on back. We've got a lot more coming up here in 2025. Subscribe to or follow the Perrysburg Podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Thank you very much for listening today. Happy holidays a little bit early, and I'll talk to you next week.